Hello everyone and welcome back to Flashback Fridays. This week I'll be taking another trip back to the Star Wars universe with Hasbro's 12-inch line of action figures, and it is the turn of Mace Windu. Now I should point out that Hasbro actually had a couple of attempts at doing a 12-inch Mace Windu figure. This one is the one that came out alongside the release of Attack of the Clones. They did however release an episode 1 version, but I think this actually came later. As you can see, this has a very different head sculpt and of course comes with his cloak, his Jedi robes, which the Attack of the Clones version we'll be looking at today does not. So looking at the packaging then, we can see of course that this is the same branding as we saw with the 12-inch Zuckuss figure that we took a look at last week. You know my feelings on that. It is mostly window display, which is very nice. Of course we can see the figure is backdropped against a pretty nice insert there. I think it's of Geonosis, although it is blue rather than yellow, so I'm not quite sure if I'm right on that, but nevertheless it is nice that we have this sort of photo montage in the back. I think that works quite well. The rest of the packaging though just has this sort of blue sort of design. I'm not sure if it's meant to be clouds or the ocean. We can see a little bit of a star field as the packaging goes along, so I'm not quite sure what I'm looking at. I've never been a huge fan of this particular branding, to be honest. I just don't like the colours of blue that they use in the main, but yeah, it's absolutely fine. It's still pretty presentable and it still looks good on display. I don't have too much to say about the side panel other than we can see a photo of the character taken from a production still at the bottom there. I think this is a pretty nice approach, especially if you decide to stack these figures up on a shelf. You can see a lot of different characters and a bit more diversity with a consistent theme, so I think this works quite nicely. The back of the packaging has a little bio about the film and of course about the character at the bottom there. We have an image of Mace Windu. Again, it's that production still, but it's been a little bit greyed out or blued out in this case. I think this looks pretty good. I think this is a bit more effective than we saw with Zuckuss, which just seemed a lot more abstract in the video we looked at last week. But this looks a lot more solid, and I think this works pretty well as a display piece. At the bottom of the packaging, of course, we can see the other figures in this particular wave, which are, of course, all Attack of the Clones themed. We see Anakin there, Obi-Wan, and that clone trooper, which looks pretty cool, I have to say. Okay then, so taking a look at this Geonosis Mace Windu, the first thing you're going to notice, he doesn't have his Jedi robes, which is a real shame because I think they did them very well in the episode 1 line. And let's start off by addressing the elephant in the room, this head sculpt. It's pretty awful. I don't know what went wrong. This is a pretty solid line in the most part when it comes to likenesses. Yes, they tend to be a little bit soft here and there, but overall they're pretty decent. But this is pretty shocking stuff. I mean, I'm not quite sure what they're trying to do, what facial expression this is meant to be. The addition of those teeth seems really misjudged. I'm not quite sure if he's scowling, smiling. I don't know what's going on. If you look closely, we can only see his bottom teeth, so I'm guessing this is meant to represent some sort of underbite. I'm not quite sure what they're saying with this. Also, look at his left eye at the top of the screen there. You will see that it's very off-center. It's a little bit removed from where it should be, especially in contrast with the other eye. This looks really, really weird, and I think it's a real shame because this distracts very heavily from what is otherwise a really nice figure. If we look at the clothing, yes, we've seen these Jedi robes before on the Obi-Wan Kenobi and the Qui-Gon Jinn figures, but it is a different material is used, and of course the colour is a little bit darker and more tan as well, and I think this looks really good. Likewise, if we look at that belt there, again, this is a recycled piece, but it's very nicely done, well painted, and it looks, in proportion, which is great. Sadly, he is still saddled with those big action man hands, the big rubber hands that are one piece. I've never been a huge fan of these, they're just a little bit too big, but they do serve multiple purposes in the sense that they can grip most items, which is fine. Although by this point they had started to experiment with plastic hands and moving digits, and if you want to see an example of that, check out my Count Dooku video. His boots are still made of rubber, but as we can see, it's a lot thinner, it's a lot more proportional, and it's actually got some detailing and paint apps on them as well. So these look pretty good, and I have to say, overall, a massive improvement on the sort of standard, where one-size-fits-all boot that they used to stick on these 12-inch figures. Articulation-wise, he does benefit from the ball joint in the neck, which is really fantastic. I really like that we started seeing this in this collection. So of course he can move his head from side to side, he can bend it forwards and backwards, nodding up and down, and of course he can also lean left and right as well, which is really cool. Now he's got ball joints in the shoulders, of course, they lift up and out. There is a bicep swivel there as well, and a single joint at the elbow, allowing that arm to bend to about 90 degrees. There is a pin swivel at the wrist as well, allowing that hand to rotate all the way around and hinge forwards and backwards. Now, there is a ball joint in the waist that allows the figure to move from side to side and sort of lean left and right. He's then got ball joints in the hips that allow the legs to kick out to the side there. They'll kick forwards and backwards a pretty healthy distance. And then there is another single joint at the knee there, allowing that to bend to about 90 degrees. And that's basically your lot. He only comes with one accessory, that is his lightsaber. This is nicely sculpted and quite nicely painted for what it is. And you'll notice it also has a little hook on there, and we'll see what that does in a moment. Of course, he does also come with the lightsaber blade, which just snaps into place, so you have the option to have it with or without the blade fully extended, which is very cool. As for that hook, there is a corresponding plug on his belt that allows you to just slip it into place. And so you have the option of Mace Windu walking around with his lightsaber on his belt. And of course, you also have the option of having that fully extended lightsaber blade there, which I think looks really cool. I've always loved that purple lightsaber. It definitely seems to be one of those unique things to this character, which makes him a must-buy, really. Although the lightsaber, I have to say, just look a little bit larger than it needs to be. I wonder if that's quite to scale. It just looks a little bit too big to my eyes. But all in all, that's a very minor criticism. I think this looks really cool. So, final thoughts for this figure? Well, as I said, it's a really nice figure, actually. It's got plenty of articulation, the costume is really nicely done, the lightsaber is very, very cool. It's just really, really let down by that god-awful head sculpt, I've got to say. I'm really glad that they fixed this and released another version, an episode 1 version, and gave them the cloak as well. I think that was really cool that they did that, managed to fix this, because this is very, very disappointing at first glance, I have to say. But all things being said, I think Hasbro did a very nice job with their Jedi line as a rule. This one is just a little bit of an anomaly. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like, and remember to subscribe, as there'll be plenty more videos soon.